It's funny, I thought freedom would taste like champagne and ocean air. Turns out it tastes a lot more like lukewarm coffee and regret. When I walked into that law office on a rainy Thursday morning in downtown Seattle, I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for closure. But life, in all its cruel humor, had other plans, and they all started with the woman who sat across from me, her name neatly engraved on a silver plaque. Evelyn Hart, attorney at law. Her voice was the first thing that caught me, calm, rich, measured. "Mrs. Hayes, I understand this is difficult," she said, her gray eyes scanning my divorce documents with unnerving precision. "Please," I muttered, "just Clara now." That was the moment something shifted. It was subtle, like the way thunder rumbles far off before the storm truly begins. I didn't know it then, but I was standing at the edge of something that would both shatter and rebuild me. Seattle rain has a way of crawling under your skin. It soaks into your clothes, your bones, your heart. Maybe that's why Evelyn always looked so composed, like she'd learned to live with the rain instead of running from it. Our meetings began as strictly professional. She'd sit behind her polished desk, tapping her pen against the papers, explaining every clause with surgical care. I'd sit opposite, pretending to understand legal jargon, while secretly memorizing the curve of her smile. She was beautiful in a way that wasn't obvious at first glance. Not the type to make heads turn in a crowded room, more the kind of beauty that sneaks up on you, stays in your mind long after she's gone. I was still wearing my wedding ring the first week we met. Old habits die hard. Evelyn noticed, of course she did. She noticed everything. "You don't have to rush," she said one afternoon, when she caught me twisting the ring around my finger during a pause. "Rush what?" "Letting go," she replied simply. Her words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. My marriage to Mark had been dead for years before I had the courage to bury it. On paper, we were perfect, stable jobs, a suburban house, a dog that loved us both equally. In reality, we were two ghosts haunting the same life. He was kind but distant, always chasing the next promotion, the next success. I was lonely but silent, pretending that emotional absence wasn't a kind of betrayal. So I filed for divorce. And that's how I ended up sitting in Evelyn's office, day after day, trying to dismantle a life I no longer wanted, while slowly, unintentionally, falling for the woman helping me do it. Evelyn was a paradox. She could make me laugh without trying, and silence me with just a glance. She was empathy wrapped in steel, soft where I was broken, strong where I was weak. Once, after a long meeting, she invited me to grab a coffee. "Just to get some air," she said. We ended up walking for hours through Pike Place Market, talking about everything except the case. She told me she'd grown up in Boston, that she loved old books and hated Valentine's Day. "I don't believe in the idea of soulmates," she said. "Why not?" "Because it makes people lazy. They stop fighting for connection once they think they've found it." I smiled at that. "You sound like someone who's been hurt." She looked away, her voice quieter. "Aren't we all?" The nights grew colder, and so did my resolve. The more time I spent with Evelyn, the harder it became to see her as just my lawyer. I'd catch myself imagining what she looked like outside the office in jeans, in sunlight, in my kitchen, barefoot and laughing. Terrified me. I wasn't supposed to feel this way, not after everything. Not for another woman. Not for someone who held my entire future in her hands. But desire doesn't care about supposed to. It just burns quietly, insistently, until you can't ignore it anymore. And the night I finally broke was the night she drove me home after a brutal court hearing. My ex-husband had shown up with his new girlfriend, a blonde in a red dress who smiled like victory. I'd held it together until we got in the car. Then I cried. Ugly, shaking, years of repressed pain crying. Evelyn didn't say a word. She just pulled over, turned off the engine, and reached for my hand. Her touch was steady, grounding. "Clara," she said softly, "you don't have to be strong all the time." And for the first time in years, I let someone see me, really see me. The next weeks were a blur of paperwork, emotions, and late-night texts that had nothing to do with divorce. She'd send a simple, "Did you get home safe?" I'd reply, "Yes." "You?" And she'd say, "Barely," followed by a winking emoji that made my stomach flutter like a teenager's. We were both pretending it was nothing, that there wasn't a growing tension every time our hands brushed when passing documents, that I didn't notice how her eyes lingered on me a little too long. But the truth was, we were both already falling quietly, helplessly, beautifully. And even though I didn't know where this would lead, one thing was certain. Freedom wasn't what I thought it would be. 'Cause maybe freedom wasn't about being alone. Maybe it was about finally having the courage to choose love no matter how unexpected it looked. The morning after that car ride, something in the air between us had changed, fragile, electric, unspoken. When I walked into her office, the usual scent of coffee and rain was there. But so was something new, a tension that hummed just beneath the surface. Evelyn greeted me like always. Polite, composed, every inch the professional. But when our eyes met, it was like she flinched just slightly before recovering. We both knew. Neither of us dared to say it. That afternoon, she took me through the final stages of my divorce paperwork. I sat across from her trying to focus, but the words blurred on the page. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out her voice. And once you sign this, she said, you'll officially be single. Her tone was steady, but her hand trembled as she passed me the pen. I stared at the papers for what felt like forever. Every line, every clause, all that cold, bureaucratic language representing 10 years of my life being neatly dissolved into ink. When I finally signed, it felt like stepping off a cliff. Evelyn took the documents, her expression unreadable. Congratulations, she said softly. Is that what this is? I whispered. A congratulations? She hesitated, then shook her head. Maybe not. Maybe it's just a beginning. Something inside me cracked open. Before I could stop myself, I said, Evelyn, I don't know what's happening between us, but, Clara, she interrupted, her voice tight. Don't, please. Not here. Her eyes were pleading, her mask slipping for just a second. And in that brief, unbearable silence, everything we'd been avoiding was laid bare between us. For days afterward, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with her face etched behind my eyelids, the way her jaw clenched when she was trying not to feel something, the softness in her voice when she said my name. It wasn't just attraction. It was recognition. Like finding a part of myself I didn't know I'd been missing. But it scared me. God, it scared me. I'd spent years building my life around what people expected me to be: a wife, a woman who followed the rules. Falling for Evelyn meant breaking every single one of them. And yet, one evening I found myself standing outside her apartment building. I told myself I just wanted to drop off a file she'd forgotten. But deep down I knew that was a lie. When she opened the door, barefoot and wearing a gray sweater that fell off one shoulder, all the air left my lungs. Clara, she said, startled. What are you? I held up the folder. You left this at the office. She looked at it, then at me, realizing exactly what I was doing. A long silence stretched between us. The city outside was alive with noise, horns, sirens, laughter, but up there, in her quiet apartment, it was just us. Do you want to come in? She asked finally. Yes, I breathed. Her apartment was nothing like I expected. Warm, filled with books and soft light. There was a half-empty glass of red wine on the coffee table, a blanket draped over the couch, jazz music playing low from a corner speaker. It felt safe. She poured me a glass, her hands trembling slightly. You shouldn't be here, she said. I know. People will talk. Let them. Her eyes flicked up to mine, searching. You're still raw from the divorce. This could be. I stepped closer. Evelyn, please stop trying to rationalize everything. For once, just feel something. And when I kissed her, she didn't resist. It wasn't a desperate kiss. It was hesitant, trembling, full of everything we'd been too afraid to say. Her lips were soft and sad and tasted like wine and regret. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were glistening. This is a mistake, she whispered. Then let it be one we both make, I said. She laughed, a broken, beautiful sound, and pulled me back in. The days that followed blurred into something both reckless and tender. We became careful thieves, stealing moments where no one could see us. Early morning coffee before work. Long walks by the harbor after dark. Late-night texts that bled into confessions. I learned the way she liked her coffee black, 2 sugars. The way her voice softened when she was tired. The tiny scar near her wrist from when she fell off a bike as a kid. She learned about my fear of thunderstorms, my love for old movies, the way I could never sleep without the sound of rain. It was ordinary and extraordinary all at once. But love, real love, rarely comes without consequence. Rumors began to spread at the firm. People noticed how often I was in her office, How her voice changed when she said my name. We tried to be discreet, but secrets are fragile things. One morning, Evelyn was called into a meeting with the senior partners. When she came out, her face was pale. "They're reassigning your case," she said quietly. My stomach dropped. "What? Why?" "Conflict of interest," she said bitterly. "Apparently, my personal involvement with a client raises ethical concerns." "Evelyn," she shook her head. "It's okay. It's what I should have expected." But the way her voice cracked on that last word told me it wasn't okay at all. That night, I found her sitting alone in her car outside the office, staring at the steering wheel. Rain streaked down the windshield, blurring the city lights into watercolor smears. "They think I can't be objective," she said quietly. "That I let my feelings interfere." "Did you?" I asked softly. She turned to me then, her eyes fierce, wet. "Yes. Every damn day." I reached over, touching her face. "Then maybe that's not something to be ashamed of." For a while we drifted uncertain, suspended between right and wrong, duty and desire. She resigned from the firm soon after. Said she needed space to think. I thought that meant she was leaving me too. But one Sunday morning, as I was watering the tiny plants on my windowsill, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, there she was, hair damp from the rain, eyes red but determined. "I tried to stay away," she said. "But every time I do, it feels like I'm cutting off my own heartbeat." I didn't say anything. I just pulled her inside. And this time when we kissed, there was no hesitation, no guilt, only the quiet relief of two people who'd stopped running from themselves. We moved in together 3 months later, into a small apartment near Lake Union. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. She started her own legal practice, focusing on women's rights cases. I began volunteering at a domestic support center. Life wasn't perfect, it was messy, unpredictable, full of old ghosts, but for the first time it felt real. Sometimes we'd sit on the balcony at night, watching the city lights flicker across the water. She'd rest her head on my shoulder and whisper, "Do you ever wonder how we got here?" And I'd smile because I knew exactly how. Through heartbreak, through fear, through the terrifying, beautiful decision to choose love, even when it made no sense. But the world wasn't always kind. My parents stopped calling for a while after they found out. Some friends disappeared. Strangers stared. Evelyn handled it better than I did. "Let them look," she'd say, taking my hand in public. "They're seeing what courage looks like." And maybe she was right. Because loving her taught me something no marriage, no divorce, no self-help book ever could. That freedom isn't about escaping someone else. It's about finally becoming who you were meant to be. And as the rain fell softly that night, blurring the city into gold and silver, I realized I hadn't just fallen in love with Evelyn. I'd fallen in love with myself, to the version of me who was brave enough to love her back. It's strange how happiness can make you afraid. When you've lived half your life waiting for the next storm, the quiet feels suspicious, like a warning. That was me, 3 months after moving in with Evelyn. Every morning, she'd leave a kiss on my shoulder before heading to her office. Every night, we'd curl up on the couch with a movie and wine, our laughter filling the small apartment. It was domestic, ordinary, almost boring, and yet it felt miraculous. But deep down, a part of me kept waiting for something to go wrong. And as life tends to do, it delivered. It started with a call from my mother. We hadn't spoken in weeks. I almost didn't answer, but guilt is a powerful thing. "Clara," she said, her tone clipped. "Your father and I heard from Mrs. Cole. She said she saw you downtown. With a woman. Holding hands." There it was, the pause, heavy as thunder. "Yes, Mom," I said quietly. "Her name's Evelyn. She's my partner." Silence stretched across the line, sharp and brittle. "Partner," she repeated, as if tasting something bitter. "Clara, this isn't you. You've been through so much. You're confused." "I'm not confused." Her voice rose. "You had a husband. A good man. And now you're throwing your life away for." I hung up. And for the first time I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at the rain tapping softly against the window. Evelyn came home not long after, her smile fading the second she saw my face. "What happened?" she asked. "My mom," I said simply. "She knows." She sighed, walking over, wrapping her arms around me. "I'm sorry." I leaned into her warmth, whispering, Why does love always have to hurt someone? She kissed my hair. Because not everyone knows how to love freely yet. But that's not on you, Clara. That's on them. For weeks I tried to shake off my mother's words, but they lingered like a ghost whispering doubts into the quiet. I caught myself questioning things I'd never questioned before. Was this real? Was this sustainable? Could love between two women survive the world outside our apartment walls? Evelyn noticed the shift. She always did. One evening she came home to find me sitting on the balcony, staring at the city lights. "Hey," she said gently, sitting beside me. "You've been distant." "I'm fine. Clara." Her voice softened. "Talk to me." I hesitated. What if they're right? What if this is just something temporary? A way for me to feel alive after everything fell apart. She didn't get angry. She didn't defend herself. She just looked at me long and hard before saying, "Then I guess the only thing that matters is how it feels right now." Her calmness broke me. "Evelyn, I don't want to hurt you." She smiled sadly. "Loving someone always hurts, Clara. The question is it worth it?" I didn't answer. I just took her hand, and in that moment I knew it was. But love isn't a straight line. It twists and bends and tests you. The following month, Evelyn was offered a position at a major law firm in San Francisco. It was her dream job, one she worked her entire career for. When she told me, I felt both proud and terrified. "That's amazing," I said, forcing a smile. She studied my face. "It's a big step," she said carefully. "I'd have to move there." I nodded. "You should take it." "Clara, you've earned this, Evelyn. Don't turn it down for me." But even as I said the words, my chest ached. She reached for my hand. "I don't want to lose you." "Then don't," I whispered. "We'll figure it out." But we did not right away. Distance is cruel. It tests love in quiet ways through unanswered calls, mismatched schedules, silences that grow too long. Weeks turned into months, and though we tried, something fragile began to crack. I visited her once in San Francisco. Her new apartment was sleek, all glass and city views. She looked different, too, sharper, busier, more tired. We had dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the bay. She talked about her cases, her team, the chaos of her new job. I listened, smiling, pretending I wasn't counting the miles between us. At one point, she reached across the table, brushing my hand. "I miss you," she said. I smiled sadly. "Do you?" She frowned. "Of course I do." "Then why does it feel like you're slipping away?" Her silence told me everything I didn't want to hear. That night when I left, I didn't cry. I just walked through the foggy streets, realizing love wasn't always about holding on. Sometimes it was about letting go with grace. Months passed. I threw myself into work at the shelter, helping women rebuild their lives. But every time I saw a client sign her own name on a lease, or smile for the first time in months, I thought of Evelyn, of the way she'd once told me that starting over isn't failure. It's freedom. We still texted occasionally. Little things. "Hope your day's okay. Miss your coffee." But it wasn't the same. Until one day, almost a year later, I got a letter. Not an email. A handwritten letter. It was from her. "Clara, I thought distance would make it easier. But it only made me realize how much of myself I left behind with you. I built a career, won cases, smiled for cameras, but none of it felt like living. Not the way it did when I woke up next to you. I don't know where you are now or what you want. But if there's still a place for me in your world, even a small one, I'll find my way back. Always, Evelyn." I must have read that letter 100 times. Then I packed a bag and drove through the night. When I reached San Francisco, the city was bathed in fog and morning light. I found her at her office, standing by the window, staring out at the skyline. She turned when she heard the door. Her eyes widened. "Clara." I held up the letter, tears stinging my eyes. "You wrote this?" She nodded, speechless. "Then why didn't you come back?" "I was afraid you'd moved on," she whispered. I stepped closer. "You idiot. I was waiting." Her laugh broke through the tension like sunlight through rain. And then she was in my arms, and it felt like coming home. No dramatic music, no cinematic kiss, just quiet, steady breathing, and the certainty that this, finally, was where we both belonged. That was 3 years ago. Now our life is quieter. We bought a small house near the coast, where seagulls replace city noise. Evelyn still works as a lawyer, but now she fights for women who've lost their voices. I run community programs for survivors. Some nights we sit by the window, the ocean wind brushing through the curtains, and she'll whisper, "Can you believe we made it here?" And I'll smile, resting my head on her shoulder. I can, because I stopped running from what I needed and ran straight to you. The rain still comes and goes like it always does in the Pacific Northwest. But now when it falls, it doesn't feel cold anymore. Because somewhere between heartbreak and healing, I learned that real love isn't about who you're supposed to be with. It's about the one person who makes you feel like you've finally come home. It's been 5 years since that morning in San Francisco. 5 years since I stood in her office trembling, holding that letter that changed everything. I used to think love was fire, intense, consuming, impossible to control. And maybe it was once. But now I know love can also be soft. It can be the quiet rhythm of two people building a life, day after day, choice after choice. Ours became the quiet kind. The kind that grows roots instead of wings. We moved to a small coastal town in Oregon, somewhere between gray skies and green hills, where the ocean meets the cliffs in endless conversation. The first morning there, I woke to the sound of waves crashing and Evelyn humming in the kitchen. "Coffee?" she asked, still in her old t-shirt, her hair messy, her smile sleepy. I laughed. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts." "Good ones." She shrugged. "Mostly about how terrifyingly happy I am." That became our thing: morning coffee, small talk, and gentle laughter echoing against the hum of the sea. It wasn't perfect. We argued about bills, about my habit of leaving wet towels on the bed, about her obsession with alphabetizing our pantry. But beneath it all, there was something unshakable: the knowledge that, after everything we'd survived, we'd always find our way back to each other. Evelyn built a small practice from home. She took on fewer cases but more meaningful ones, women who reminded her of who she used to be before she learned to choose herself. Sometimes I'd watch her work from across the room, her hair tucked behind her ear, glasses sliding down her nose, completely lost in thought. And I'd think, God, this is what love looks like. Not grand gestures, not fireworks, just quiet devotion in the middle of an ordinary day. I went back to school too. Finished my degree in social work. I wanted to help women the way Evelyn once helped me, not by rescuing them, but by standing beside them until they could rescue themselves. She came to my graduation, sitting in the front row, clapping louder than anyone else. When I walked off the stage, she kissed me right there in front of everyone. Later that night I teased her. "You know, that was pretty bold for someone who hates attention." She grinned. "You think I care what anyone thinks anymore?" And just like that, I realized neither did I. Our house sits on a hill overlooking the water. Every evening the sun melts into the sea, turning everything gold. We have a little ritual: we pour wine, sit on the porch, and talk about the kind of nonsense that somehow feels profound at sunset. Sometimes we talk about the past, sometimes about the future. Once she asked me, "Do you ever wish you'd never met Mark? That you'd found me sooner?" I thought about it for a long time before answering. "No," I said. "If I hadn't lived that life, I wouldn't have been brave enough to choose this one." She smiled softly. "You always know what to say. That's because I learned from you." She laughed then, that warm, unguarded laugh that still makes my chest ache. And in that golden light, with the ocean breathing below us, I realized that love isn't about rewriting your past. It's about finally living in your truth and forgiving the roads that led you there. We never got married. Not because we didn't want to, but because we didn't need to. Love for us stopped being something to prove. It became something to live. Still, we wear rings, simple silver bands we bought at a small market on a trip to Santa Fe. They're scratched now, dulled by time and dish soap and everyday life. But they fit perfectly. Some nights we dance in the kitchen. No music, just the rhythm of rain against the windows. Her hand on my waist, my cheek on her shoulder. "This feels like forever," she once whispered. "It is," I said. And for once I didn't doubt it. A few months ago, we adopted a dog, a golden retriever named Penny, who refuses to understand personal space. She follows Evelyn everywhere, from the office to the shower. Sometimes I joke that she loves Evelyn more than I do. Evelyn always smiles and says, "That's impossible." Our friends visit, sometimes a small circle of people who saw us through the worst and still stayed. We cook, laugh, play cards. It's simple, it's good, it's enough. On quiet nights, I write stories mostly. Not about grand romances or perfect endings, but about women finding the courage to love in a world that tells them not to. I guess, in a way, I'm still telling our story, just in different names, different faces. Evelyn says my words remind her that hope isn't naive. It's necessary. The hardest part about happiness is realizing you have to fight to keep it. Last winter, Evelyn got sick, nothing serious, just pneumonia. But seeing her so still, her usually strong voice reduced to whispers, shook me more than I expected. I spent nights by her bedside, holding her hand, whispering half prayers I didn't believe in. When she finally woke up, groggy but smiling, she squeezed my fingers and murmured, "You look like hell." I laughed through tears. "You scared me." She smiled faintly. "Guess now you know how much you love me." Evelyn, I already knew. But that moment carved something permanent into me, a quiet gratitude for every heartbeat, every breath we still shared. Sometimes we drive down the coast with no destination, just music and open sky. She sings terribly, I sing worse. We stop at diners, take photos, talk about everything and nothing. Once we found an old record store in a town so small it didn't even have a name. Evelyn bought a scratched vinyl of Blue by Joni Mitchell. That night we played it on repeat while the sea wind howled outside, and she said, "You know, this song sounds like us." I laughed. "Which one? The heartbreak or the healing?" She smiled. "Both. And maybe that's what we are, heartbreak and healing, all tangled up together, making something beautiful out of both." Years later, when people ask how we met, we tell them the truth. "She was my lawyer," I say with a grin. Best case she ever won. Evelyn always rolls her eyes at that, but secretly she loves it. Because that's what we are, two women who found each other in the wreckage, who turned pain into something that could bloom again. We still fight sometimes, still miscommunicate, still go to bed angry now and then. But every morning we start over. Every day we choose each other again. And maybe that's the real miracle, not that we found love, but that we never stopped choosing it. Tonight, the sky outside is heavy with stars. Evelyn's asleep beside me, her breathing slow and even. Penny snoring softly at our feet. The world feels small, safe enough. I think back to that first day, walking into her office with trembling hands and a broken heart, believing divorce would set me free. And I smile. Because it did. Just not in the way I expected. Freedom, I've learned, isn't about being alone. It's about finding the person who makes you feel most like yourself and having the courage to stay. So here's to the kind of love that doesn't need perfection. The kind that survives distance, judgment, fear. The kind that grows slow and deep, like roots holding steady through every storm. The quiet kind of forever. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.